All right, we're going to go ahead and call this public hearing to order. Just as a reminder, I had a few brief comments, and then Mr. Lebo, our Chief Operating Officer, is going to have a few comments, and then we will move on to the public comment. I did want to say first off from the beginning that this is a public hearing. We're here tonight to listen. Unfortunately, we cannot take questions in tonight's format. If anybody has any specific questions, feel free to email those to us and we will make sure they get answered. Or you can grab somebody after the hearing's over and give the question to them and we'll make sure that they answer that. I did want to thank our staff, and again, I want to start by saying this is a very uncomfortable, unfun process of going through a redistricting. None of us up here would love to not be here and be somewhere else. But it's very important, and we appreciate you all coming out tonight to express your views about the plan. I do want to thank our staff, though, because they've been working very hard over the last year on this plan. And I will say that in Frederick County, we do it a bit differently than a lot of the other counties around us. Many of the counties will just simply present the plan and say, this is it, and the board votes on it. They don't go through the public engagement process that we have gone through over this last 6 months to 1 year. So again, I want to thank our staff, Mr. Lebo and his staff, and Dr. Albin for all they have done to take as much input as we can into this process. So tonight's session is being recorded. It is not live, but it will be available on podcast probably sometime in the next day or so. So if you can't stay for all of it or wanted to watch it again, you can do that on fcps.org. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lebo.
Good evening. The Board of Education seeks public comment on the superintendent's recommended attendance areas for the Linganore, Oakdale, and Urbana redistricting study. The recommendation was presented to the Board of Education at their regular meeting on September 11th, 2019. Staff was charged by the Board of Education in November of 2018 to conduct a redistricting study to establish the attendance areas for two new elementary schools, Sugarloaf and Blue Heron Elementary Schools, and to balance enrollment in the study area. There are 10 elementary, 5 middle, and 3 high schools included in this redistricting study area. Guidance throughout the project is provided by Board of Education Policy 200, School Attendance Areas and Redistricting, and FCPS Regulation 100-2, Redistricting. Goals, as outlined in the Board of Education Strategic Plan, also served as direction to staff with regards to community engagement and preparation of the recommendation. In the development of the recommendation, staff held 3 sets of public meetings to discuss the project and gather feedback from the community. The first round of public meetings was held in January of 2019 to introduce the study, scope of work, methodology, and schedule. The second round of meetings was held in March, and staff presented several concepts for discussion and feedback. The third round of meetings was held in June of 2019 at all 3 high schools in the redistricting study area. Those who attended the meetings or later watched it on the website heard a presentation of 2 options that staff were considering. Attendees were asked to provide feedback about what they liked and disliked about each option. The community was also asked to consider the relative importance of the factors included in Board Policy 200 as they provided feedback on the study. There was significant community engagement in the study and a robust communications plan developed to support the study. After tonight's hearing, the board will hold 2 additional public hearings, one on September the 19th at Linganore High School and one on September 24th at Oakdale High School. Again, those hearings are the same as this evening, 7 to 9 p.m. with sign-ups for speaking beginning at 6:30. The Board of Education will discuss the redistricting again at their September 25th regular Board of Education meeting and is scheduled to decide on the redistricting boundaries on October the 16th. The new attendance boundaries will be implemented over 2 years in the fall of 2020 and the fall of 2021 to align with the opening of Sugarloaf and Blue Heron Elementary Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Lebo. And I did want to remind speakers to please come to the microphone up front here. I will do my best with name pronunciations, but I know I will get some wrong, so please pronounce your name for the TV audience. You do have 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, the buzzer will go off, and at that point, you could complete your thought so that we can make sure to try to give everybody the opportunity to have their public comment. With that, our first speaker this evening is Roman Sychev. Okay, we'll move on to Tina Sanford.
Okay, am I loud enough?
Yes.
Members of the board, thank you for being here this evening and for listening to the community members regarding this very important decision concerning redistricting. My name is Tina Sanford. I'm an SLP for FCPS. I also have 3 children. John, who graduated from Urbana in 2017, Claire, who will graduate this year, and Dominic, who will hopefully graduate in 2022, as long as the recommendations are followed. We all know that redistricting of schools can be a very emotional situation, but this evening I want to talk to you about numbers and not emotions. FCPS currently educates 41,000 students in 10 high school feeder patterns. This redistricting will impact 22,000 students in 3 high school feeder patterns. More than half of FCPS students will or do attend one of these 3 high schools. It's obvious this is not ideal or sustainable, and Dr. Albin herself has said the aim of the redistricting is, quote, "You will now go into elementary school and a middle school and a high school and a more congruent feeder pattern," end quote. If we look at the results in 5 years, we can see that the congruent feeder patterns are accomplished, and now all 3 high schools are near or at utilization, and the need for the much needed high school in the southern part of the county will have a much stronger case for state funding. No one's arguing that. What I'm asking you to look at this evening is this small area and the numbers involved here. This area, which is scheduled to be redistricted, is bordered on the east by Route 80. To the northwest by the woods that separate Kemptown Park from the rest of the feeder pattern that it will be joining. And then to the south and west by the rest of Kemptown and Windsor Knolls. These are planning blocks number 35 and 36 and represent 72 K through 12 students. Considering the numbers of the location of these planning blocks, this recommendation serves neither the purpose for realigning a feeder pattern or in the best interest of the students. These students are geographically cut off from other students they will be attending high school with. We have a physical barrier on 2 sides and the rest of the feeder pattern going to Urbana High School. It puts them at a disadvantage for things such as study groups, tutoring, extracurricular activities, when parents are unavailable because they are at work, taking care of another child, for numerous reasons. And we all know that extracurricular activities are an important part of becoming part of a high school. The mere fact that we are talking about 10 students in any high school cycle is also a concern. Are we sending a bus for those 10 students for high school? What is the expense and what is the cost of this to the students if we're in fact asking them to get on buses at 6 o'clock in the morning to make the trek to Linganore High School because we're trying to put them through other neighborhoods to cut the expenses? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Felipe Gomez. And if Casey Mooney could line up behind Felipe, and then Jolie Bloom.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Felipe Gomez. I live in the Lansdale community, and I believe that the recommendation is unfairly punishing our community. In regards of high school, 2 criteria I think have been ignored completely: safety and distance. Our community is the only reassigned community in terms of high school. Our community that is very close to Urbana now is going to have to do all the path to Linganore High School. And in terms of distance, it's obvious. The distance is longer and the drive is longer. And in terms of safety, it's well known by the people living around that the road, the Ed McLean Road, is unsafe for a bus school. It's even forbidden for us to turn left on that road because of safety issues. Has been flooded several times. It's been reported accidents of trucks under a bridge that is there, and now we are the only ones targeted for sake of efficiency because they can pack many of our kids in a bus to take to Linganore. I think it's unfair, and it's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey?
Hi there, I'm Casey Mooney, and I'm a single mother of 2 Centerville Elementary School students. First, I want to say that living in Urbana, the school situation is an embarrassment of riches. We have great schools, we have great elementary schools. I don't think there's anything bad I can say about any of the options my children have. I will say that I chose Urbana not for convenience. I work in downtown DC. I chose Urbana for a lifestyle, and so I could afford my children an opportunity to live in a way that I find difficult in other parts of our state. I chose the house closest to the elementary school. So if I walk out my front door and I turn right, there is no other front door on Sugarloaf between my house and the school, which was great for me because when my kids were finished kindergarten in first grade, I could say, you guys can walk to school. I'd like to foster independence and give them an opportunity to have sort of the kind of lifestyle I had when I was a child. So this plan, I looked at both of the plans, the last opportunity we have. I live 0.2 of a mile from Centerville Elementary School. Both plans put my children at Sugarloaf, which is 2 miles away. Again, it's not a bad school, but it changes the way that my children live. So I feel like somewhere along the line, a radius of less than 2 miles to get people to a school doesn't make any sense. And I know the math is difficult when you're trying to figure these things out, but I feel like at some point, the math got ahead of the common sense, that people who live so close to a school can't go to that school and instead have to go somewhere 2 miles away. So I ask that maybe you could consider a larger radius around each school so that those of us who want to have a certain kind of life for our children can still preserve that life. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Valerie Roan, and then Kim Kelly, and then Heather Reck. I'm sorry, and then back, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you all for listening to all we have to say today. I know that this process is not fun necessarily for any of you or for any of us, but I appreciate you speaking to us. I did get to speak with Mr. Lebo before, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to some of my concerns. So our neighborhood, the Lee Hill community, between the June options that were presented and now, found out on when the September 11th maps were released that our community was now affected. Neither option A nor option B ever mentioned that we would be slated to be redistricted. We all the parents I know in the community all read the materials, responded to the surveys, so we were really surprised to see that we were slated to be redistricted. Just to reiterate what I spoke to Mr. Lebo about earlier, we were put in planning blocks in such a way that one of the nearby cul-de-sacs in our neighborhood, here's a cul-de-sac, these 5 houses with stars share a shared driveway, but 3 of the houses are going to be sent to different schools, and 2 of the houses are going to remain in schools as they're currently slated. So it just seemed a little bit odd that happened, and a little silly, to be honest. Even without that, I'm going to talk about middle school tonight because I don't have a lot of time to talk about the other schools, but similar to this map that was shown earlier, I have a map that shows an island south of Interstate 70 where the Lee Hill community is located. As you can see in orange, it is now slated to go to Newmarket Middle, whereas this community north of 70 is now slated to go to Windsor Knolls. So it seems like if we're concerned about the welfare of neighborhoods and the emotional well-being of our children who have gone to school with these folks since kindergarten, that we wouldn't want to now send them to a new school where they'll literally only know their friends from this part of the neighborhood, send them up to a new middle school to meet all kinds of other new friends, and then for high school, send them back to Linganore where they'll, I guess, be reunited with their friends that they had made in elementary school. So I don't like to complain. I don't like my kids to complain without maybe offering a solution. So my recommendation is that we just flip-flop these 2 spots and have I-70 be a natural border where everyone south of that would go to Windsor Knolls and everyone north would go to Newmarket.
Thank you. Valerie?
Hi, my name is
Hey.
Valerie Roan. I am the mother of 6 children, 1 Urbana graduate, 1 current Urbana student, 1 student who was looking forward to attending at Urbana High School in the fall, and 3 others who would be following in 2021, 2023, and 2025. We moved to Frederick County 13 years ago when our Montgomery County School District was facing similar overcrowding situations. After speaking with our daughter's school teacher, she told us that if we had any other options, we should take it. We took her advice and moved into a lovely community in what is now known by Frederick County as Planning Block 36, or what our neighbors have now labeled the Linganore Island. It is a small tract of land just south of Route 80. Our community is an established neighborhood primarily made up of single-family homes on 1 to 5 acre lots, with little or no buildable lots, thus no room for future expansion. The street we live on is the road that connects the neighborhood together, running from Route 80 to the Montgomery County line. The proposed switch from Urbana to Linganore, while only a few miles further, becomes exponentially farther when you have a school bus that has to stop at every single driveway along its route. Because there are no sidewalks, every home is a separate bus stop. Currently, there are 3 separate Urbana buses that service our small community. At present, bus routes begin around 6:15 a.m. With the proposed redistricting, this will no longer be the case. The majority of these students will remain at Urbana. However, approximately 14 students per year will be relocated to Linganore. These students who are redistricted to Linganore will be the furthest away and will be forced to leave home even earlier to accommodate for additional travel time as well as additional stops. This could mean students leaving their homes before 6 a.m. for a 7:30 start time. In addition to leaving extremely early in the morning, after-school activities would also be a significant issue. My children that would be starting at Linganore would not be driving themselves to school for at least the first 2 years, making participating in after-school activities near impossible. Unlike Urbana, Linganore is not located easily along a commuter route. There are not many other Linganore students, if any, that would be traveling in our directions in which to secure rides with. The nearest community that would also be attending Linganore would be the Manorwood subdivision off of Penshop Road. However, this community is much more densely populated, so there would be more options for those students to not only have friends in their communities, but would have more students to share transportation with. There are so few homes on our little Linganore Island that there will be only a handful of high school students at any given time. I believe it is approximately 3 to 4 students per grade. So not a lot of options for help if transportation needs arise. While longtime friends who live on our street or a few streets away would remain at Urbana High School. Since starting at Urbana, we have been indoctrinated with the one team, one Urbana motto, which focuses on respect, unity, integrity, and pride. My son was a member of the Urbana wrestling team that won the state championship in 2018. He proudly wears his championship ring. This experience has helped us to feel the Urbana unity and pride. It has been difficult explaining to my children that they will not be a part of this Urbana community any longer. We'd like to ask the board to reconsider the boundary line separating the 2 school districts and consider leaving the Urbana Island homes with the rest of their community at Urbana High School.
Thank you. Next up is Kim Kelly, then Heather Reck, then Ming Chen.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Kim Kelly. I have 3 children in FCPS, 2 at Green Valley and a 7th grader at Windsor Knolls. We live in Planning Block 59 along with 30 other FCPS students. I appreciate that this has been a very arduous process with a lot of research and hours spent gaining and analyzing public input. I've followed this process from the beginning. I've attended meetings, completed surveys, and actively participated in the process, despite the fact that up until now, my neighborhood was unchanged. I was very happy with this. We're a 30-year-old neighborhood with no development plans, little turnover, and I was frustrated that the new recommendations last week changed my neighborhood at not 1 level, but 2 levels, the elementary and middle. My community is the only one that will move from Green Valley Elementary to Newmarket Middle, isolating our children. Our community is being split. Planning blocks 54 and 46 were split up recently, and 2 new planning blocks were created. This isolates parts of the neighborhoods by sending them to a different school. These are the only 2 planning blocks in the entire study area that were split up. I want to take a term used last week at your Board of Ed meeting, wonky lines. I feel like this represents those wonky lines where this area south of 70 is being sent to Newmarket, and north of 70 goes all the way down to Windsor Knolls, which is much further. There's also a house that sits directly across Lindbergh Road from my neighborhood that remains at Green Valley and Windsor Knolls. So the bus will come pick up those students, and the only way to get to the schools is to turn around in my neighborhood. This doesn't seem like the best way to use our bus resources and establish bus routes. Instead, I'd like to propose that you use the natural boundary of Route 144 and Route 70 to divide for the middle school and keep our students at Windsor Knolls, sending the Twin Ridge neighborhood with the rest of their Twin Ridge community to Newmarket instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Heather.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Heather Reck. I currently have 2 boys here at Urbana. One is a sophomore and one is a freshman. At this point, they already love the school. They've joined the hockey team, they've made friends, and they actually have some favorite teachers already. They have become Urbana Hawks, truly. However, I understand that high school is not just about education. It's about a teenager finding out who they are on the way to becoming an adult. They start to build relationships, friendships, and figure out where they want to go and who they want to be. I feel that switching children in the middle of high school is detrimental to their welfare. I was very happy in seeing the superintendent's redistricting plan that she was allowing juniors and seniors to stay at Urbana. What I'm asking for is that the sophomores also be considered in that plan. If not officially in the plan, then at least allow us to do out-of-district transfers, and under both situations with the assumptions that the parents would provide the transportation. So that would not bear any cost to Frederick County for additional bus service. My guess is that it would have minimal impact because a lot of parents can't provide that transportation, or some kids actually want to go to another school. I'd ask you to consider these options as you go forward with the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ming Chen and then Kelly Reed Bradford.
Good evening. Thank you for coming here. So first I saw the results. I did two things. So first is the sentimental analysis about people feeling about the new redistricting. So it seems that the board members listen to us. So I'm living in Urbana community. I think now it's neutral about options. Second, I just take a look at the results. So that's kind of like angry me or not really angry me. Just like the results doesn't add up. So if you remember, all the board members read the report or from the Cropper GIS. So for the second table of the recommendation for the school project, all the numbers doesn't add up. So I have highlighted here. You can see on top of is the first table, the second on the bottom the second table. So those numbers don't add up. I'm just wondering what's going on with the accuracy of the report. How you based on this kind of report to do the projections. So that's kind of, I only do the elementary schools. I didn't do middle and high schools. So I'm suspected there might be some errors there. I hope you guys can double check with the company to do the analysis and give us the accurate report. And I wish all parents here also go online to check out the data to see whether or not those data is correct. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kelly Reed Bradford. I usually don't get them right, so that's a plus.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Reed Bradford, and I live in the area north of Route 80 in the Manorwood subdivision of southern Frederick County. We have been a part of the community since we moved to Frederick County 21 years ago. I have 2 children, a 2017 Urbana grad and a current UHS freshman. While I feel strongly about other issues regarding the redistricting, what I want to speak to tonight is the decision to exclude current UHS 9th graders from the group of students and families given the opportunity to decide whether they are willing or able to provide transportation, allowing them to stay in this building. Further, while I was not able to obtain numbers, which I would really welcome actually, By my rudimentary calculations, we're talking about a few dozen kids. There would be no backfilling from our area, meaning that once the class of 2023 graduates, the attrition would be complete. My son has learned his way around this building, met new teachers and friends, joined clubs, and is settling into his new routine here. He would be here right now, but is on the football field at practice. Linganore is a fine school, and if my son chooses to attend there as part of the plan, that is fine with me. The point is, he and those in the same situation should be given the choice. To take that away makes helpless and not in control of their own lives at a time when they are supposed to be growing more independent, confident, and autonomous. I respectfully request that the chosen plan allow the families with current freshmen who are impacted to choose for themselves where they would be best able to thrive. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next up is Jennifer Compton, then Ken Broadwater, and Brenda Mayland.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Compton. I'm the mother of two Kemptown Elementary School children. We reside in Planning Block 36 in Monrovia, and I live directly across from Kemptown Elementary School. My neighbors have referred to our Planning Block area as the Linganore Island, south of 80, because under the superintendent's recommendation, we will become an island south of 80, isolating us from the rest of our Kemptown community, moving us from Urbana High School to Linganore High School. As working parents, we rely on many neighbors and friends in the Kemptown community, south of 80, for our support network, which includes sports, activities, community efforts, and many other things. With the superintendent's recommendation of redistricting these 3 small planning blocks, which is only 5 streets, to Linganore High School removes us from our Kemptown community. My neighborhood is 1 street with no sidewalks, similar to the planning blocks in 35 and 39. And by the time my kids get to high school, there will be 1 family on my street that I can rely on for help with school and community activities, as well as for working parents. On average, there will be approximately 14 impacted high school students per year in these 3 planning blocks, which is less than 1% of the impact on the overall Urbana high school population. I believe our children will receive a good education regardless of the high school. That is not my concern. My concern is about the community and our network, as we will no longer be a part of this community where we have already established our network and our support group, which is the part of the criteria in the redistricting effort. I have heard the superintendent state her recommendation will lead to a more congruent feeder pattern, and I'm not clear on how this is possible by breaking up the Kemptown community and increasing bus routes and travel time by isolating 5 streets when these streets were kept in the elementary and the middle school feeder pattern. What we do not have are the schools to support the growth and development of the county, and what is needed is a new high school or significantly remodeling the 3 high schools in this redistricting effort. It's a temporary Band-Aid for the systemic challenges the county is facing. We moved here from Montgomery County willingly and paying more taxes because we believe our children will get a better education here than they would in Montgomery County. And this will become even more constrained by not alleviating the real capacity challenges. Significant amount of time, money, and resources being spent on this current redistricting effort does not change the capacity constraint we are facing. On the recommendation, Linganore will be at 99%, Urbana at 95%, and Oakdale at 88%. And by 2025, all schools are over capacity, and the communities will yet again be faced with these similar challenges around redistricting or continue to face overcrowding and constraints for teachers, students, and a system as a whole. What I ask the board, the superintendent, and the county is to work on a long-term solution, truly accounting for the growth and development of the county and take into consideration the disruption of the intact Kemptown community and the impact that this will have on our family, as well as the overall transportation impact on the feeder patterns of south of Route 80. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ken Broadwater.
Good evening, my name is Ken Broadwater. I have, with my wife, the honor, I guess you would say, of being the southernmost home on Linganore Island. The boundary is literally on my property line, which is a double kick in the tail because 2 years ago we bought that property specifically because it was Urbana High School. We spent the prior 14 years in Urbana. Picked that place specifically for that reason, which I'm sure a lot of the Lansdale folks probably did something similar. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. But also I'm sure the same thing these folks have calculated. I know for our perspective, we're 10 miles extra every day to Linganore from Urbana. Over 180 school days, that's 1,800 miles a year. 4 years is 7,200 miles. That's 3.5 times across the entire United States of America, just because we have to go to a school that we shouldn't have been going to in the first place. The number of high school students who are impacted here should make no difference whatsoever in the functioning of Urbana High School. I think you need to find a way to take the burden off the kids and the families, find a solution that fits for them, instead of shipping them off someplace where they really shouldn't be going in the first place. I don't have anything else to say other than I think you need to come up with a new plan.
Thank you. Next up is Brenda Mayland and then Suzanne Tovart.
Hello.
Good evening.
Given the vast number of students that will be affected by these plans across the county, I urge the board to come up with a thoughtful strategic plan for the students with special needs, especially those students that rely on routine, patterns, and struggle with transition. I see this as a big problem. Now, students have been in an elementary school for 2 years and know where their classroom is, know where the gym is, know where the nurses that have come to rely on where things are. Now, suddenly, they're moving to a new school, new environment. Everything's new and will be especially challenging for these students. So I urge you to come up with that plan and coping mechanisms for our students, the resources needed, especially for the special education programs that will be affected at all these schools, so that there's the least amount of disruption for the students in their education, given all these changes. Second, I was a bit concerned about statements that I heard during the board meeting that the Centerville Elementary School will now be a walkable school. I want to challenge that conclusion based on the moving of the homes that are only 2 to 4 blocks away from the school currently, as one of the other parents noted. They're only 0.2 miles away, and now we're suddenly shifting to Sugarloaf based on these changes. So I'd urge additional analysis in some ways, such as an observational study. I didn't hear any mention of those. Perhaps they're in there, but just stand on the corner of Centerville any morning and see where the flow of these people are coming in the community. It's pretty obvious every morning where the walkers are coming from, where buses are coming from, where all the cars are lining up. That I think is a crucial overlook, as well as there's also data in the schools. We all fill out every year, are we a walker, are we a rider, a car rider or anything. So I think the schools also have that data. So I'd encourage additional data analysis before coming up with this and using, as the other mom said, a more common sense approach versus just numbers and students in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne? And then Matt Greshkovitz.
So short. I am here actually tonight to say thank you for this process. I have been another one of the parents that have been here all along, listening, speaking, and you have been taking into consideration our comments, so I greatly appreciate that. And I applaud the parents that are here tonight, continuing with the process, especially for us Kemptown parents. While my house is not affected, I am in support of the Linganore Island. I've looked at the numbers myself, and while there's no situation where all of Kemptown can go to a high school together, I do think that this particular situation does need to be addressed and that it makes sense for them to move. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt. And then Biana Stewart.
Good evening. My name is Matt Reskovich. I live in Whiskey Creek, here along with my wife, my neighbors. In fact, if all my neighbors can stand up from Whiskey Creek. We're all here tonight in solidarity, trying to convince the board to keep our Whiskey Creek students at Urbana High School. We're going to hear from a number of our neighbors tonight, sharing their thoughts, presenting some facts, and recapping Whiskey Creek's history of Urbana pride. Simply put, we've been here for 21 years. We've been an Urbana neighborhood. In fact, we're a 21754 neighborhood, Imesville address, just like the high school. The high school was developed back in 95. Whiskey Creek followed that in 98, before the boom of the villages and the highlands. So we've always viewed this as our community. This is where we've been going all these years, and this is what we'd strive to continue to go to. We've always been a very crucial, very supportive, and incredibly impactful neighborhood when it comes to the overall development of the entire Urbana area as a whole. If Tina wouldn't mind, oh, we lost the map. I know that we've been hearing, to echo a lot of the same sentiments that we've heard earlier tonight with Linganore Island. When we look in that map, we're number 56, and we're only a little over 2 miles from the entrance of this high school to the entrance of our neighborhood. And so when we look at that, it even looks so powerful to look at that map and see how close we really are. So the Whiskey Creek residents, which again is number 56 on your map, we respectfully would like to keep our children going to Urbana High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Bianca? It looks like an N, but
Good evening, and
Good evening.
thank you. I'm Bianca Stewart. I'm one of the residents of Whiskey Creek neighborhood, and also called Plan Blocks 56. Today, I'm going to speak why a community is important. Community is important because it allows people to interact with each other, share the experiences, develop valued relationships, and work toward a common goal. A person's skills and resources are directly related to his or her participation in various aspects of a community, such as education, employment, and recreation. A positive community hones the skills of persons and help him or her achieve their goals. People feel connected to one another in a community, and they are interdependent on each other for many reasons. Members of a community also feel motivated in achieving a desired outcome. They feel a sense of worth in performing certain activities with other members. They share resources and interests. Moreover, a community has a fundamental impact on the development of children by providing the environment that helps to nurture a child's physical and cognitive development. We are all grateful we have it so good here at Whiskey Creek. Most of us work around Urbana High School District and chose our homes based on how we felt connected to this community in raising our families. I truly believe the fabric of this community, a large part of what makes it great, is based on the fact that our families and schools are so close-knit. I think we all know the benefit this has on families and on growing children. In today's world, we are the lucky ones. We cherish our community, the small town feel, and knowing our neighbors by their first name. We share carpools to take our kids to places. We love working together to raise funds for the welfare of our community and our kids' schools. I'm here to point out that Whiskey Creek residents are very much a part of the Urbana High School community, and we have been an integral part of this community since Urbana High School was built in 1995. Finally, the idea of our kids having to go to a school in a completely different neighborhood when all they have ever known is a school down the street, which they have made a connection to, is against everything we have planned. Based on these community effects, I humbly request the school board to keep Whiskey Creek neighborhood a part of Urbana community as it has been for the past 20 years. Thank you.
thank you. Jason Stewart. And then Melanie Greskovich.
All right. The community of Whiskey Creek, Plan Block 56, is concerned with young drivers going to Linganore High School because of potential hazards. First one is Ed McLean Road. I rode on that Sunday going, I guess, south. That is a dangerous road, blind turns, and it doesn't even have midline markers. 75th, or Interstate 75 going north is also dangerous, especially once you get by the bridge. There's tons of different ways you can go. You could possibly get on 70, get hit by trucks, and then you've got commercial vehicles, young kids trying to drive on that. And then on top of that, we got to drive 20 minutes one way. Our community would like for you to consider us to remain at Urbana High School. We have been with the Urbana community in high school for years. It was also recommended by the Cropper GIS that we remain with the Urbana High School in both option A and option B in June. We believe that Urbana is a much safer route for our children. The Whiskey Creek entrance is currently directly across the street from homes that remain in Urbana High School on the south side. Our Urbana School District is our entrance is located less than 3 miles, basically 2.3 miles away from the high school currently. I feel safer with my kids driving on that. They start going west, 50 miles an hour for 0.7 miles till they cross Hyamsville. After that, hits 40. You got Villages of Urbana on the north side, and you've got more of a partition until after a mile, you hit 25 miles an hour because of the schools. And everybody knows when you go slower, you have less likelihood to hit pedestrians and have high-impact collisions. In conclusion, we believe that Urbana High School is much safer and a faster route for our children at Whiskey Creek. This will enable us to maintain their extracurricular activities and academics with less travel time and continue on fundraising activities with our current Urbana friends and neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Melanie. And then Justin Timpane.
Can you hear? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. Hi, I'm Melanie Greskovich. Last week, after the Superintendent's Committee presented her suggested redistricting choices, Ms. Schaefer pointedly asked the committee why would neighborhoods such as Whiskey Creek be sent to a school that is a further distance than another closer school. The committee responded with a two-part answer. The primary reason was to balance enrollment, and the second was to honor the history of the feeder schools. I am here tonight to respectfully submit that those answers may apply to other neighborhoods that are affected by the redistricting, but they do not apply to Whiskey Creek. I'd like to address the reason of honoring the history of feeder schools first. Since the beginning of its development in 1998, Whiskey Creek students have always gone to Green Valley Elementary, Windsor Knolls, and Urbana High School. That's 21 years. In talking to our current 18 families, Whiskey Creek has had 20 children graduate from Urbana High School since 2010. Those 20 children participated and shined in extracurricular activities such as football, wrestling, soccer, shot put and discus, choir, and lacrosse. Whiskey Creek history shows that Green Valley Elementary, Windsor Knolls Middle School, and Urbana High School have paved a successful pathway for our children. Our children are still slated for Green Valley Elementary and Windsor Knolls Middle. Please honor our 21-year history and keep them at Urbana High School. The second and last reason that I need to address is balancing enrollment. Upon doing some research and working with the numbers provided in the superintendent's report, I respectfully submit that our small number of students attending high school together does not affect the enrollment percentages that the superintendent's report submitted. Currently, we have 3 children attending Urbana High School. Those 3 children equate to 0.06% of the population. As for the future, Whiskey Creek is planning block number 56. We have 6 high school slots allocated to our planning block. After talking with my neighbors, I can report that Whiskey Creek will not hit those 6 slots until the year 2028. That's 9 years from now. Those 6 students correlate to less than 0.5% of the projected population. The number of high school students from Whiskey Creek is insignificant to the superintendent's goal of balancing enrollment. But make no mistake, our children are not insignificant. Whiskey Creek's history with Urbana High School is not insignificant. Whiskey Creek's history as an Urbana neighborhood is not insignificant. On the contrary, please vote to keep our Whiskey Creek kids in Urbana High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Justin, and then Sarah Robbins.
Hi, thank you.
Good evening.
First of all, this is not fun. It's not fun for us. It's not fun for you. You worked hard to come up with your plan, and then we stand in front of you and we tell you what we think you did wrong. And that sucks for you and for us. So I want to acknowledge that. I think a lot of the things that we fear here is that this is just an opportunity to be heard. Like you have a plan and then you listen and then your plan goes into effect. And I think that we're all here because we kind of want it to be something more than that.
To quote a favorite movie of mine, you are guarding all the doors, you are holding all the keys. And all we really have the power to do is come up to you and try and influence you for major things that are going to affect our kids. And that's kind of all we can do, because we're coming to you to help, but we're fearing that all the decisions have been made, and it's scary. I've seen a lot of shaking hands. My hands are shaking. We're up at night worrying that what's going to happen to our kids, and can we influence you just that one little bit to help our kids' hearts not be broken, to help them stay with their friends. A lot of us looked at the map. Difficult to articulate the map on the internet, trying to do it on the phone. A lot of us thought we were safe. And then we looked at the new plan, and then we see that things have changed. I want you to please consider that the pathway to no for all of the things that we're asking is really easy. You're hearing a lot of pleas. It's very easy to go, oh, this is hard. I would just ask you, for each and every single person that was here, to consider that we are all representing a kid. So that being said, my son, I spoke to him today and I floated the idea, what about going to a new school? And he said, that sounds awesome. What about my friends? And I said, well, what if none of your friends were there? Because on the street where I live, my son is the only elementary school kid that he can see walking out his front door that's going to the new school. Our next door neighbor to the left is his school. All of our neighbors to the front are his school. The kids he walks to school with those kids are all Centerville. They're all the old school. He looks out at a sea of people who are going to where he always went. He's the only one. Every single kid that he knows, that he hangs out with after school, that he's worked so hard. He's a special needs kid. At the beginning of his school time, he was having violent outbursts. His assistant principal is here tonight. She's to the point now where he's actually making plans at school to hang out with friends after school. It's huge for him. And not a single friend that he does that with is a kid who's going to the new school. He can't walk to anybody in the new plan. We have the honor of being the farthest east of all the schools. And so there's not a single person that he knows. We're 17 homes on our street, one of only 3 homes going to the new school. We are 14 doors down from Centerville, and instead the new school is 2 miles away. In closing, I would just ask that you please consider streets that are being broken apart, and hear the people here going to Centerville who are saying some of us can walk 200 yards, and we're getting bused 2 miles away. We don't understand.
Thank you. And Justin, I just want to reiterate, we don't do questions, but we literally got this plan September 11th as well, and we're going through it. If you follow the redistricting, the previous one, we went through the same process and we made changes before we voted on it. So we're not here just to go through a process. This is for listening to the public and making sensible changes. So thank you for coming out.
You just warmed my heart a little bit. Thank you so much.
Okay. Sarah Robbins. And then Oscar Chang.
Good evening.
Good
Thank you
evening.
so much for being here listening to all of us. I know this is not easy to do for a whole community. I'm another LHS Islander. So we live in a great area. We were fine with Urbana, we were fine with Ligonor, but what we're not fine with is being separated from the rest of our community. As you know, we were slated for Urbana, just like the houses around us and the people we know in our community around us, but now we're one of probably 10 high schoolers next year being sent on the other side of 80. If you've been down Route 80, you can see how it divides the community of Monrovia, geographically determining how communities form. Currently, if my children stay after school and need to carpool, miss a bus, or become sick, I rely on the neighbors around me who are all south of 80. The superintendent's proposal will change that because we calculate there will be only about 10 students south of Route 80 attending LHS in our Ligonor Island. I am concerned about how this will impact my son's abilities to do extracurricular activities. He's in theater. His friends in theater, he can walk to their houses. He will no longer be able to do that. And as well as be a tutor at school and how it will isolate us from other parents. I ask that our Ligonor Island, which represents less than 1% of the UHS population, be reconsidered so that we are not geographically isolated from our support system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Oscar Chang and then Doug Maskey?
Hi, good evening. My name is Oscar Chang, and I have a kid in the Centerville Elementary School. I'm speaking on a elementary school parent perspective, and I would like just to say thank you to the FCPS and the Board of Education for doing all this. And I'm here also to show the support for this current superintendent's recommendation. There are a couple of reasons. First of all, the current plan has incorporated the community suggestion throughout the whole different stages, and this is what we have suggested, and this is what we want. And also the long-term growth of the area is being considered in this plan. There will be less chance for redistricting in the future. And this plan has the most balanced enrollment in terms of elementary school enrollment. And when compared to the other draft option, as well as the other option has ever been suggested, this is the most balanced one. And also the elementary school feeder pattern is better than the other options in that proposed in the June. And so all the students in Urbana school will be fed into the Urbana Middle School. And finally, I would like to thank the Board of Education and the FCPS and also the consultant for doing all this for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Doug, and then Lindsay Wilkes.
Put this to band height here. My name is Doug McCosey. I'm here to speak in behalf of Whiskey Creek. I guess it's hard to believe this is my second redistricting meeting. But I wanted to speak in basically our relation to Whiskey Creek and Urbana. My voyage started back in 1999 when I built a house in Holly Hills. At that time, that was Urbana. So I had 3 boys at the time, all since graduated from Urbana: Tyler in 15, Jake in 17, and Kevin recently in 19. So I started coaching. My biggest thing was through coaching. So I started coaching in 2004. Urbana had its own baseball team at that time, youth baseball. They did not have football. They didn't have wrestling. That was all through Luya. So I got myself on the Luya board. I spent several years on the Luya board. 2009 rolls around. We see a new high school going up across the street from us where Oakdale was, and my kids came to me and say, we want to stay in Urbana. We want to be Urbana Hawks. So we moved to Whiskey Creek in 2009. That was right before I think the redistricting happened. But we knew we were going to end up going to Oakdale. So I moved to Whiskey Creek, and a good friend of mine, Tim Malott, was my next door neighbor. We got really involved in Urbana. Tim obviously was instrumental in the legacy field and the practice fields. I was heavily involved in that with him as well. I donated to legacy field. I coached for 12 years in youth. At the time, Urbana was part of the Urbana football youth program that started, which was probably only about 5 or 6 years ago. And then the wrestling team I pretty much started myself. So I coached wrestling for 12 years. I got the whole area program built up, and then I broke off Urbana. So I was part of Urbana sports for 12 years, and now my kids have graduated. But I have a lot of history in Urbana. If I look through the rosters of kids I've coached in Urbana, it's well over 100, 150 kids. So I have some pretty deep ties. We moved to Whiskey Creek thinking that was a lock for us to stay in Urbana because it was so close to the Urbana entrance. So I feel for all these people, you know, being so close to the Urbana entrance and not really being an Urbana Hawk, especially when they start there and then they can't finish. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lindsay.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to parent concerns. I currently live in Urbana and my children attend Centerville Elementary School. While the need for another elementary school was clearly important, the borders in Urbana area for elementary school do not make sense for the families living there. I live in Planning Zone 145. That is one of only 2 planning blocks in the upper right-hand corner of the villages of Urbana/Highlands area. That will be bused across town, passing our previous school to get to Urbana Elementary. I've looked at every map, I've filled out every survey, I've attended every meeting since the very beginning.
None of the 5 previous maps had our students going to Urbana Elementary School until the superintendent's recommendation. While I know all 3 elementary schools will be surely be high quality, I ask that the board take a common sense look at the new boundaries in Urbana, where now walkers will be bus drivers and parents will be driving past several schools to attend their new school. Clearly, proximity to schools was not a major priority. Please look closely at planning blocks 144 and 145, who will be isolated from our Centerville neighbors and the dozens of planning blocks in our neighborhood around us and bus to Urbana Elementary, with which, if the proposed borders go through, will actually have a larger enrollment percentage than Centerville in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all that I had that has signed up. Is anybody here that would like to speak that had not signed up? Anyone? Well, we would like to thank you then for coming out this evening. And as was said, right now we're in a listening stage where we're taking input. I can assure you that the board does take that into consideration. This is an extremely tough redistricting process due to the fact of the density of some of the population and where the students are in proximity to the school. But we do and will take all that into consideration. As was said, we're having another hearing Thursday at Linganore and then Tuesday at Oakdale. In addition to that, if you think of something tonight that you didn't think of and would like to pass along, you can email it to the board, get it to Lisa Fowler's our board administrative assistant, or any of the board members or staff will make sure to share it. As was said, in September, we will have at our next meeting then a discussion of what we heard at the public hearings, what we've heard through email, what I've heard at the grocery store, what I heard tonight at the fair, and everywhere else, and we'll take that into consideration, and then come back at our following meeting to make a final vote in October. And while I would like to say I think we could make everybody happy, I know that isn't totally possible, but what we want to look at are what changes make sense that work for the school system and what's in the best interest of the students. So we do thank you for coming out and sharing your input tonight. We do appreciate it. It is an important part of the process, and as I said in the beginning, we feel that the community input is vitally important. There's a very strong sense of community here in Urbana, and we want to make sure that we honor that and all the families in all the areas that have gone to Urbana, Linganore, and Oakdale have contributed to our school system. So thank everyone for coming out again this evening, and have a great night.